All right. Well, we are kicking off a brand new series called Making Change Today. And this is one of those series that I'm excited to share with you guys. I've been looking forward to this series for quite a while now because I believe that fundamentally there are little things that impact the trajectory of our life. Little changes that we can make in our worlds that will lead us so much to a different place in an incredible way. And so over the course of the next 4 weeks, my hope is that you would see some life change take place in your world as we look at just a small way to tweak that or to change that. In fact, my hope is that some of you will leave after 4 weeks from now being involved in this, kind of staying engaged in this, and you'll see that not only has your life changed, but maybe your family has changed, or quite possibly relationships with friends and others, or your spouse has changed because of the things that we're going to talk about over the course of the next 4 weeks. So let me just cover some of the basics of where we're headed before we dive into today's message. So here's what we're going to talk about. First off, today we're going to talk about this idea that less is more. That less is actually more. We're going to talk about that. So we're going to save that for the next 20 minutes. But next week, we're going to be talking about this idea that stress is bad. Can anybody agree with that stress is bad? Like, just a few of you. The rest of you are really strange. Like, you like stress. Weird. But we're going to find out next week that stress is bad. And so show up, because actually we're not going to find out that stress is bad. We already know that. We're going to find out how do we deal with stress and things of that nature. Then in week 3, we're going to talk about how giving is good, how it actually is an amazing gift to be able to give. What an incredible thought that we are able to give into other people. And so giving is good, week 3. And then the last one in week 4, we're going to talk about this, that tomorrow matters. Tomorrow matters. All right? So that's where we're headed. But today I want to dive into this topic of less is more. Because some of you, if you're anything like me at all, you've been programmed at one point in time or another to figure that actually more is better, right? So if you had $1, $2 would be better, right? It's kind of what we've thought, that $1 is good, but $2 is better. Or if you've got one car, that's good, but 2 cars would be awesome. One boat, but man, 2 boats. Could you even imagine? I can't even imagine that. Join the Freedom Boat Club, then you have apparently all of the boats. Any boat you want, you have. Or what about this? 1 kid is good. 3 kids is even better. At least that's what I thought most of the time. Most of the time it's better. Most of the time. But if more, is it better? Is more actually better? See, before you get judgy against me, I'm not alone in this. I think that as a society, we have placed a value on the fact that more is better. But I'm asking it is more better? Really? I'm not sure. See, let's talk about this. How many of you remember back in the day when you had to pay for a refill on your soda? Remember that? It's okay. Show your age. Come on. Well, yeah, I actually remember that. I remember vividly sitting in a Pizza Hut in Michigan on family vacation, which is probably the only reason why I had a soda. And I was we had spent the day at this amusement park, and I sucked the soda dry like that. And my dad looked at me and was like, well, I guess you're going to have water from here on out. And I'm like, what do you mean? How come I just can't have another soda? I played that whole thing in my mind, and he was like, well, you have to pay for that. Well, somewhere along the line, somebody determined that more is better. And so you can have as many refills as you want. You could drink as much soda as you want, take in as many calories as you want. And McDonald's jumped on that, right? No longer are we just small, medium, and large. What did they introduce? Supersize. Yeah, that's right. Can I supersize that for you? Yes, you can supersize that. Let's go all day long. And now the bags get bigger and the fries are pouring out of the bags. How about 7-Eleven? You don't go to 7-Eleven for a drink. No. You go to 7-Eleven for what? A big gulp. And that's a big gulp for a giant, let alone for a normal human being like you and me. We have no need for that much fluid. And certainly we can't even carry it around. They weighs too much. They give you a 5-gallon bucket with a tap on it, and they're like, go fill this up at the spigot. And then you pay 79 cents for it. It's ridiculous, right? But more is better. So if it's not 7-Eleven, KFC. What do you get your chicken in? A bucket. You get so much chicken, they're like, here's a trough. Like, just take it home with you. Like, we've made cardboard buckets for you to leave this place with. That is, more is better. Before you all get self-righteous and you're like, listen, I don't go to McDonald's, and I haven't had a big gulp in an eternity, or I don't even remember the last time I went to KFC. How about this, okay? The 30, right? Starbucks determines that whatever they're small, medium, tall, grande, venti, then they're like, let's come up with this other word for the really, 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 really big one, right? Like, the more is better. How caffeinated can you and I possibly be? And then Costco comes on the scene and everything is more. Like, it's just all more. You just leave the place, you're like, do I need that much toilet paper? Yeah, you do. You're going to use it and just take it home with you. See, in honor of this theme, I want us to turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 6. And today, we're going to center ourselves on one verse. If we're talking about how less is more, today I want us to just spend the day in one verse. Typically, I like to kind of go through a whole passage or through a whole section of Scripture, but today, less is more, so we're going to focus our time in one verse out of Ecclesiastes. And if you haven't read Ecclesiastes, this is a great book for you to read through this week. I'd highly encourage you to crack your Bible open on a day that, basically any time that ends with the word day. Like, that's a good day to open your Bible. So tomorrow it'll work. Monday, Tuesday will also work. This is a great place for us to be today. Because Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 6 has this way of wording this truth that I think will apply to us in some incredible ways today if we allow it to pierce through the more is better mentality. Look what the writer says here. He says, better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and a chasing after the wind. When I was growing up, we lived in New York City, and in order to go do anything that, is not in like a concrete jungle, you have to leave the city. And so we left the city and we went to go to this pumpkin patch, and by pumpkin patch, I really mean a parking lot where they spilled out pumpkins all over, and you could buy pumpkins, however many pumpkins that you could put in your hands, you paid, like, let's say it was $20. So my dad, he goes and he gathers all these pumpkins. He's got two big ones on the bottom. And then the rest of us kids, we start loading him up with more and more pumpkins till it's like a pumpkin pyramid over his head. And he's literally walking like this. All you had to do was make it past the checkout. If you made it past the checkout, then you were good. You could drop him. Whatever happened, that was on you. That was your $20. Well spent. And so he looked like a fool, right? But he had two hands loaded up with pumpkins because we were cheap. And we didn't want to buy that many more pumpkins. Now, what if we just walked in and grabbed one pumpkin in one hand and we were able to walk out casually? It didn't have to look like a fool. It didn't have to look weird. We could actually do other things. This verse is saying better is one handful with tranquility than two handfuls and looking like a fool. Two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. See, one handful can be better. One handful is better because what happens? Let's just say something were to happen in someone else's life. What can you do? Now you have a hand to help somebody else up. Or now you have a hand to put it around somebody's shoulder and comfort them when they're in pain. Now you are able to do something because you're not pushed to the max. You're able to do more than you could if you were completely full. See, what I want to do today is I want to focus on when less is more. Not necessarily like less of what, but when less is actually more. See, less of what doesn't matter. See, here's why. I think that when we focus on what matters, you and I we can hone in and we can live a life that has meaning, like we talked about last week. See, I want you guys to pull out your notes today. We put them in every program, every week. There's some notes here. Today, it's a blank sheet of paper because I want you guys to do me a favor right now. This is all swim. Everybody skates. Go ahead, click your pen, and I want you to put the numbers 1, 2, and 3 in the top over here. 1, 2, and 3. And I want you, in the next 30 seconds, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this. In the next 30 seconds, I want you to write down what really matters to you. What are your top 3 things? No judgment. Don't show it to your neighbor. What are your top 3 things in your world? Top 3. What would you write down? Okay? Don't overthink it. Click your pen, write it down. If you don't have a pen, borrow from a neighbor. Top 3 things that really matter in your life. As I was thinking through this, it actually is incredibly simple if you just say, okay, go, now, what is it? Go, go, go. Top of your head, top 3 things that matter in your life. See, here's what I'm guessing. If you're finished, and you could spend the rest of the time on this, that's fine. If you're finished, though, my guess is that somewhere along the lines, you put something that has to do with a person. It's probably a person is on that list, whether that's a friendship, maybe that's a relationship, maybe that's your marriage, maybe that is your kids, maybe that's your relationship with God. Or maybe you put on that list something about your health or the health of somebody else that you love. You know, maybe that was what's made the top 3 on your list. Or maybe you wrote on the top 3 is the name of one of your best friends. Maybe it's your college roommate. Maybe it's, something like that. But here's my hunch. My hunch is that there is not a person in the room, not a single person in the room who wrote down how much money I have. Not how much money is in the bank. I'm willing to guess. And if I'm wrong, I'll treat you to ice cream. Pens down. That you did not write the iPhone 8. Here's why I know, because nobody wants it. They're all waiting for the 10. But even still, you probably didn't write the iPhone 10. I'm just guessing. I'm guessing you didn't write that. I'm guessing that nobody wrote down a boat. Nobody said, oh, my boat, that's the most important thing. I'm also guessing none of you wrote down a newly remodeled bathroom. Probably not. Even though you've been waiting years for that to happen, you probably didn't write it. I'm guessing that you didn't write the number of Instagram followers you have or your Facebook profile. See, when we define what really matters, when we hone in on what are the top 3 things of your life, we could spend all day talking about this next idea. Where do we spend most of our energy? What do we fill our life with? And what is it working towards? See, my hunch is that the top 3 things that you would say matter most to you, you actually spend most of your time working towards other things. Seems kind of backwards to me. See, we've bought into the lie that more is better. That if we actually just do more, if we spend more, if we get more, that's going to matter. We've bought into that more is better. But look back at Ecclesiastes. It says, better is 1 handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and a chasing after the wind. We're going to go through this multiple times today because I want you to get this. Like if you leave here today and you're able to recite that, man, my job has been done. Better 1 handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and a chasing after the wind. See, what I want to do is I want to keep this incredibly simple today. Because I want to give you 3 thoughts on how to live a less is more life. If you're taking notes today, you can write down the words, less is more life. And the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to learn to do today is we're going to learn to actually cut back. When Tiffany and I lived in our house in New Jersey, we lived in a small, expanded cape. It was built in the 1940s. It was expanded somewhere around the 1970s, 1980s. And so it was this very cute little home. You walk in, very small driveway, small living room. There was a small dining room. Everything was small. Apparently they just loved it small back then. And so you walked in, and on the first floor, the original floor, there was 1 closet. 1. And that 1 closet was our coat closet. Coats are the thing that you put on when it's cold out. Right. Sometimes it snows. That's frozen water. So that was our coat closet. That was also our pantry. That was also where we kept our vacuum. That's where we kept the dog food. And let me tell you how big this closet was. I couldn't walk into it like this. My shoulders would be wider than this closet was. And I had to put all of that stuff in there. Now, let me remind you, this was a small house. And so there was a decision that Tiffany and I made where we were like, what do? We have no pantry. We've got no place to put the vacuum. There's all these things. And I said, how about we take space away from the living space on our house? We'll lose living space in order to gain storage space because we have to put more away. And so I built this closet, and that became kind of the catch-all. And then we made the other small thing into a pantry. See, in the 1940s, they had a different mentality. The mentality was that you only had what you needed. You only had what you used. You wouldn't kind of store away for that rainy day, or you wouldn't necessarily try and accumulate more and more and more. It was a generation that did without. It was a generation that lived with, few articles of clothing. And yet, it was 2015, and we're trying to figure out how to jam all of our stuff into this 1940s home. See, fast forward today, now some of you go into your home, your closet, and you actually walk into the closet. You can shut a door behind you. It's another little room in and of itself for your things. And then there's this weird thing is, and maybe it even happened today, you walk into the room that's got all of your clothes hanging floor to ceiling. It's got like a lower rack and an upper rack that holds all of your clothes. And you walk in and you kind of touch all your clothes. And then what do you say? You're like, I've got nothing to wear. What gives? Like, I've got nothing to wear. All of this stuff, the lower rack, there's nothing there. But then there's the upper rack, the upper deck, if you will. Nothing to wear there either. And then you probably have like drawers that you like, they lay down. You lay your clothes down. And you're like, nothing to wear in here. What do? I have to go get more. Right? Because this is the mentality. We want more. We've been trained this way. And see, here's my hunch. My hunch is that you and I, we actually take away from the living space because we've filled it with so many other things. Every now and then we need to remember that less is more, less is more, less is more. What does Ecclesiastes say? Is better is one handful, better is less than two handfuls with toil. Two handfuls with a chasing after the wind. I've never caught the wind. Never. And that's the idea is you'll never finish. You'll continually be chasing, be trying, and be headed in that direction. See, Jesus, he undergirds this mentality, this teaching, when he teaches us this in Luke chapter 12. Jesus is walking along the road, and he's with his disciples, his best friends, and kind of hanging out, and they're walking along, and somebody yells from outside of the crowd, and they know he's a teacher, and they're like, hey, Jesus, why don't you tell my brother, this schmo over here, to share his inheritance with me? Dad died, and he won't give me any. What does Jesus say? This is his exact response after this man yells out. He says, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life doesn't consist of an abundance of possessions. Jesus says, actually, you need to be on your guard. You need to post up against what? Say it right here. Greed. He's saying, look out for greed. Look out for that desire for more. Like Gollum in the ring is like, my precious. Like getting all that stuff together. Like, look out for that. Look out for greed. The abundance of possessions is not where you find life. Jesus says your life doesn't consist in that. Our minds know that. We know essentially it's not about that. But our hearts are conditioned to want more. I'm thinking this morning about Pizza Hut. We're like, can I get extra cheese on that? And then they're like, you want more cheese? I'll figure out how to get more cheese. Do you remember when they started stuffing crusts with cheese? They were like, you can't get enough cheese in this joint. And that was disgusting. But it was what they did because more was better. But what if? Just imagine with me, what if less is more? What if we cleared out space in our life to live? Rather than taking space from our life to store stuff. See, the first thought in order to do this is that we need to clear out. We have to clear stuff out. Just got to get it out. Friends of mine had a garage sale yesterday. I said, how'd it feel? They're like, it was amazing. They took the junk out of my garage and gave me money. They gave me real American dollars for the stuff that I was going to throw out. They cleared out, and they felt good about it. See, the second thing that we need to do is we also need to just create a space in our world. See, when we clear out, I want to get back to that because there's something important that we can't miss out on. It's that concept, if you will, of my friend's garage. When you clear out your garage, there's enabling them to do what a garage is built for, to park a car in it. I think we've all forgotten it. That's what garages were actually for, right? We've cleared space, we've cleared it out in order to use it in the proper way that it was designed for. And see, when we clear something out, we're allowing for something else to happen. And this doesn't just apply to material possessions. I want you to think about it. When we declutter, when we cut back, the first things we're going to cut back, the seconds we're going to clear out. What happens is this actually makes room in your soul. It makes room inside of you so that life becomes less burdensome. And when it's less burdensome, it allows for it to be more meaningful. See, when we allow ourselves to clear things out that have been weighing us down, it gives us time back to take care of the things that you wrote on your paper. The top 3 things on your paper. We fight against that because we just keep adding more and more to our world. But see, here's what I want to acknowledge, that I know this is so difficult for many of us to clear out. If I were to ask you to go home and clear out 10 things, some of you could instantly do it and others of you would be emotionally attached to it. I get it. See, some of you have a story like mine where you grew up and you didn't have a lot of money. Stuff didn't really come, like you didn't get a ton of birthday presents or a ton of Christmas presents. And so you had a little bit more of a scarcity mentality. In my garage right now, I promise you, if you were to walk in, there's a pegboard on the wall, and on this pegboard, I have one of these little contraptions. It's got about 36 little drawers in it. It's filled with junk. Like, it's filled with old screws. It's filled with nuts and washers and light bulbs to the headlights of a car that I don't own anymore. But it's all like, well, what if I need that? Like, I can't get rid of that. And I carry this junk with me. Like, I paid to move that from New Jersey to Florida. Like, and I organize it, and like I know which is the wood screws and which is the machine screws, and like I'll never use those screws again, but I have to hang on to them. And there's something that's in your world right now that you're like, I never use it. It sits in the corner of my closet, but I can't get rid of it. Because there's a scarcity mentality. Or maybe there's something it's just sentimental. It's like, well, I got that as a gift on my wedding, and I couldn't possibly part with it now. That was 45 years ago. You haven't used it in that amount of time. Somebody else can use it. Like, what if we just released ourselves and we said, I want you to have the use of something that I don't actually use and allow it to live in its fullest potential. I acknowledge that there's times in life when we want to have things around us and they make us feel comfortable and like a sense of home. But what if we just don't have to own everything? What if we own a few things? Better is one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. See, one of the reasons why I believe that this is so incredible and such a shift for us is because we're surrounded by choices all the time. Like, we walk into our closets and we say, well, I have nothing to wear because it's overwhelming us. I was at the Cheesecake Factory the other day. An incredible place. We don't go there very often. Mostly because I can't make a decision on what I'm going to eat. I don't know if you've ever seen their menu. Like, it's bigger than the Bible. Like, they set it down and you're like, I don't know. And just like, I do one of these, like, just, okay, I'll have that. Like, whatever that is, number 400 on the menu. And it's so expansive, I just don't know where to even begin. Psychologists have told us that there is something called paralysis of choice. That when you and I have too many options, like we turn on Netflix and we're like, there's nothing to watch. Come on. There's too much to watch. That's what we're really saying. My life it's filled with so much stuff. See, some of us, we just need to clear out And we'd be able to operate better. Our lives would live better. We would live the way that they were intended. See, clearing out not only frees you, but it allows you to bless other people, to give stuff away, to let somebody use something that you will never actually use. Walk through your closet today. If you haven't worn it in a year, it's probably time to let somebody else wear it. If you go out and buy a new pair of pants, send another pair of pants out. Say, it's been nice knowing you. You served me well, but now I'm going to let somebody else wear them. Maybe like if you get a new shirt, send another shirt out. You get some new underwear. Do not send that out. You have permission to just throw it out, all right? Do the world a favor. See, listen, I want us to bring this back together, though. Can you imagine if you went through your house, through your world, through your storage unit, and you decided to give away 100 things? What if? My hunch is you would feel better about yourself. Not just because you made a difference in the world and you helped somebody who had less than you. My hunch is that you would feel lighter. You wouldn't feel so much pressure. You wouldn't feel like burdened and heavy. It would just feel like, man, this is amazing. There's space in my life to breathe. See, here's one and last thing that we're going to talk about today is number 3, we're going to talk about this, is to live a less is more life. We're going to pay things off. We're going to pay stuff off. If we're talking about less is more and stress is bad and all these kinds of things, wouldn't you agree that financial stress is absolutely and completely no fun? Like nobody says, man, I love paying high interest rates on my credit cards. Like I sleep better knowing that I'm in debt. Like I love the fact that I have no control over my schedule and I have to go to work and overtime and all of this other stuff. Nobody has ever said to me sitting across the table, my debt brings me joy. Oh, man. Like when I get my credit cards down too low, I just have to go. I don't even care what I'm buying. Just take the money. Like I have to have that. Nobody says that. See, this is why we're going to pay off. We're going to talk about this later on in this series, but we're going to talk about the heart behind paying it off, so that it honors God. That's the motivation behind that. But being debt-free is fun. You may say, I can't get there. I could never imagine being there. But what if we just imagine taking one little step towards that today? What if instead of demolishing the whole thing, and we're not talking about that, but what if we just took one step towards paying it off, towards being debt-free, reducing the stress on that? What does it say? It says, better is one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and a chasing after the wind. In other words, better is it to have financial margin and be able to help others than living paycheck to paycheck, wondering what would happen if you didn't get a paycheck. See, what are we going to do? We're going to cut back, we're going to clear out, and we're going to pay off in order to have a less is more life. See, look at this word right here, tranquility. I'm going to blow this up, tranquility. Tranquility is that idea of being tranquil or peaceful, being peace-filled. Frequently, we're searching for peace. There's something in your life that you're trying to find. And sometimes we fill our lives with so much stuff thinking that it's going to serve us, that it's going to make our lives easier. And it's going to do this. Peter, this is the food processor. This is the blender. And this is the Vitamix. And this, why do you have all of them? They do the same thing, right? Well, it's going to make my life easier. No, it's not. See, Jesus is saying that we are to live and guard ourselves against greed. Ecclesiastes says it's better to be at peace than to be in constant toil. See, I know that at the end of the day, it probably sounds like I'm saying you shouldn't have anything, and that's not what I'm saying. I just don't think we need to have everything. You should have some nice things in your world. The things that you love, the things that bring you joy. But too often we fill our worlds with stuff that actually chokes out the joy in our life. That it doesn't serve us anymore, but we serve it. This year in April, we're going to be taking a trip down to Guatemala, 11 of us, and we're going to be drilling a clean water well. I talked to you about this last week. I hope that you'll come. I hope 11 of you will come, I should say. And we're going to open that up, sign-ups real soon. We're getting all the details together, so you'll hear about that. But here's what I know is going to happen. We're headed down to La Maquina. We're going to leave La Maquina and go into this surrounding area to drill a clean water well in a village that does not have access to clean water, clean drinking water. And this well, in the course of 7 days, we're going to drill it, we're going to cap this well, and we're going to then gift it to the community and say that there is a church in Sarasota, Florida that cares about you. But here's what's going to happen on the first day. You're going to show up, and your eyes are going to be like wigging out because you're going to roll into this little village, and you're going to walk down this road, and you're going to get to the place where we're going to drill the well. It's probably near a school. It's probably near the center of their village. And you're going to look around. And you're going to see that nobody has stuff. That their houses are like tarps over 4 posts. And there's like corrugated metal for the walls. That they have dirt floors. And that's all you're going to see at first. You're just going to see that. Day 2, day 3, you're going to start being like, they don't have shoes. They don't have this. That soccer ball is deflated and torn. And then day 4, you're going to realize something. Something's going to shift, and I promise that this will happen. Day 4, you're going to be like, they don't look like they're unhappy. There's so much joy. They're smiling. They're laughing. They're loving life. They walk into a closet and they say, I have nothing to wear because they don't have a closet. They don't have anything to wear. They don't care. They're filled with joy. Day 7 hits, and you're like, I'm kind of jealous. Like, how do I live like that? And then you're flying home, you're coming back from here, and you're going to land in Tampa, and you're going to be like, this is what's happening. I'm going to watch The Minimalist on Netflix, and then I'm going to start giving everything away and live with the shirt on my back, and that's it. Well, here's now 10 days removed from the trip. You're like, yeah, supersize that, big gulp, and if I could also get a bucket of chicken. The more is better mentality creeps back in. I've done it. I've been on these trips, and I promise you that I come home changed. And then something happens, and I wonder, what is it? Why do we have this mentality of that more is better? Guys, listen, you have one life. You have one shot. And if you hear me say nothing else today, do what matters in your life. See, God has invited us to a life that matters, to live a life that is meaningful, to live a life that honors Him, to follow after His heart. That whatever His heart beats after, our heart should beat after that too. That as we leave church today, we go and we should be good neighbors. That we should be good coworkers. We should be good bosses because Jesus instructs us to live that way. That we should live life in that capacity. And yet sometimes we get derailed because we have this desire for more, to accumulate more and more stuff. See, you have been given one life. You're but a breath, like a vapor. And our lives are over. And I don't mean that to sound like I'm not trying to make you feel bad. But every now and then we need a little check-in. Am I doing stuff that matters? Or am I just trying to accumulate stuff? See, when you recognize that your calling is too great, that your God is too good, that life is really, really short, then you refuse to waste life on things that don't matter. Because less is more. That less is more. If I can say it this way, better is one handful and really good relationships with my kids than 2 hands and struggling to know my kids. Better is one handful and an incredible relationship with your spouse than 2 handfuls and feeling like you're just ships that pass in the night. Better is one handful and having deep and meaningful relationships with friends. Like the life-giving kind of friendships where you're like, oh, I cannot wait to hang out with those people again because I feel alive in that moment. Then 2 handfuls and a work schedule that precludes you from knowing anybody. So guys, better is one handful and the ability to make a difference in someone else's life than 2 handfuls and being consumed with yourself. Guys, what do we know? that less really is more. It really isn't about gaining more and more and more, and that fills us. See, I want you to, again, one more time, take a look back at your list. Those 3 things, or recall it in your mind, what you wrote down. These are the things you identified as being the most important. Let me ask you this. How are you doing with that list? Is what you're gathering, consuming, and contributing adding value to that list? What could you let go of today to gain more of what really matters most?